Wow, do I have a special guest this time? Someone we haven't had, and you're going to see a lot today, is John, Sik and Mechanical Clark. How you doing? Hi.
I'm good.
Fellow full-timer.
Yes, it's nice, isn't it? It's nice. I like it.
When I'm at the end of February and I'm like, man, it's been so busy this month. I haven't done a single thing for the Game Pass show, even though I wanted to. I was like, oh, hey, you're just here with me all day. Let's talk about a bunch of Game Pass games.
True story. It's a whole new world. It's the dream of playing video games and just doing that for a job as fun and exciting as it sounds. Yes,
especially when they're horror ones that you love. I don't. But no, we are here to talk about one you actually love, and that is Bluey the video game.
Well, let me caveat this.
No, you gave it a 10. I heard it in part of the video.
I got overridden by my children. So I love Bluey as an IP. I think it is probably one of the finest kids' TV shows ever made. I think it's suitable for adults. Like when season 3 dropped, I watched it on my own when my kids were in bed. Don't judge me, all right? Bluey is excellent television. But let's talk about Bluey the game. Bluey the game, which I think I gave 6.5, right? So it is.
But then you scratched it out and gave it a 10.
So I wanted to include my kids' opinions on the Bluey game, and maybe with a bit of fancy editing, I'll give you the opportunity to do that here. But if you don't, that's fine. But nutshell, it is a very, very simple, almost tablet-esque, mobile-esque collectathon game. And the only reason it got elevated to a 6.5 for me was Bluey, in the way the TV show works, always communicates a lesson of life, of morals, of reality to both parents and child alike, and that's one of its charms. And if the game hadn't successfully delivered a story worth the Bluey IP, I probably would have felt a lot more sour on it. But there's lots of neat little touches. It's got the original voice cast from the show, both kids and Bandit and Chili, which are the mum and dad. The art style is translated well into video game land, and it's got lots of recurring kind of nods to the TV show that your kids and grown-ups, including me, would like. But if it hadn't have nailed the heart of what Bluey does, it probably would have been a little bit less of a score, and that's why it landed where it did. The game is structured into 5 adventures, right? And the whole premise is they find a treasure map in Adventure 1 where Bandit is talking about something he buried a long, long time ago in the creek with his brothers, and it's a treasure, right? And spoiler alert, because look, if you're about to go play the Bluey game and you're upset I spoiled it, we need to have a talk about what constitutes spoiling things. But the final part is it all gets dug up after getting all the other map pieces from the brothers and all this sort of thing. And it's just an old toy, right? And Bluey is initially upset that it's not actually something treasurable. And then, Bandit explains, what's important to people, and the memories and the journey is what the adventure was, and that's what's memorable. And then you're like, oh yeah, that's right. And then it's all carried through correctly, right? And that's where it managed to just nudge itself up. But if you're a gamer score collector, it's an easy 1,000. Easy.
Yeah, I think our friend Patrick Macca just put up a get everything in 2 hours guide. Yeah. Worth checking out.
Yeah, if you have the patience for it. I think the worst aspect of having to do that is listening to Chili's voice actress. They could have recorded a few more lines, but throughout the game, as well as the adventures, there's lots of collectibles, which are different toys and things from the show. And every time you find one, she goes, "Oh, you got a sticker sport. Nice one." And it's just that on repeat all the time. But yeah, like it's got co-op as well. So if you've got a little one that's not great with the controls, it's only a couple of buttons and the left move stick. You can as players, either mum or dad, Bandit or Chili, you can actually pick up Bluey or Bingo and carry them on your shoulders as any parent would, and co-op it, and it can do 4-player. So if you've got the whole family round the telly to play through the Bluey game.
What if you have an only child, though?
Then it's very sad.
Yeah.
For the only child.
No one likes an only child. We feel bad for them.
We jest. We love you, really, only children. Wait. We need to rethink of this whole scene.
You were the one who said that. I didn't say anything. That's just on you.
Yeah. I'm gonna creep away now. But yeah,
I like the fact that it's something so different, because we get so many of the third-person shooters and the RPGs and the simulator games and stuff on Game Pass, but the family side of things is always nice to see more. They've done a pretty good job with it overall lately. I think they've had a wonderful diversity in Game Pass, and something like this. Yeah, it's not a great game, but they've had this. They've had Peppa Pig. Peppa Pig sucks, by the way. They're evil. That show. We wouldn't let our kids watch that.
Cow.
Yeah, we wouldn't let our kids watch that show because it was like, oh, they're just teaching you bad behavior.
Yeah, like she is the most entitled, whingy little brat.
Like, nope, no Peppa Pig. But still, having those types of games, I think. I know a lot of people are like, oh, where's all the big third-party AAA IPs that are 5 years old? It's like, well, the newer stuff, the better. The more diverse the genres, the better, because there's already 500 something games in there. So being able to get something like this, I'd never play it, but that's fine, because there's just a ridiculous amount of families and kids and grown men like you who do want to check it out as something like it is.
Well, I certainly wouldn't have played it if I didn't have kids. I would have just been like, oh, cool, a Bluey game, you know. At the same time, it is just another. It is a low effort cash in outside of the voice acting and the art style, and that is a shame, because Bluey as a show is so wonderful, imaginative, and amusing that they could have done something more deep in terms of what the gameplay was. But it's no different to any walk around a 3D environment collecting things, kind of game that you'd play on an iPad. And that's the disappointing side of using that licensed IP to not. You could have made something more engaging, more brilliant that does for video games what Bluey has done for kids TV.
Well, that's when you run into
that's the miss.
How much does it cost to do something better, and how much more, if any, would you actually make? And that's why you see so many mobile games, because you can toss a mobile game together for way less than a console or PC one. And then it ends up making like 7 times as much on average if you hit. So
that's the industry for you. And look, and clearly it was enough, because my kids, I asked them, each of them, what would you give it? And look, let's be honest, they immediately went for 10 out of 10 because it's Bluey, and Bluey deserves that kind of love. But I would certainly say, if you are a childless gamer, it's probably not for you. But if you've got kids of any age, especially if they're sort of 4 or 5 and just really getting to understand the pad and how to navigate a 3D space, it's a great learn how to play in much the same way Peppa Pig was. It is translating those easy, I know how to swipe on an iPad, onto a controller to then elevate them and move them onto other more complex video games. But yeah, Bluey the game, it could have been a lot more, it could have been a lot worse. It's perfectly fine for kiddos to play through in a couple of afternoons. You won't have let anyone down with that. And I think that's good enough.
I agree. I'll never touch it, but I agree. Well, thank you, John. I'm going to see you again in a second to talk about Dead Island 2.
Yes. Hello, everybody. This game is a bit older, and I'm going to interview Jesse this time around, because I think he's played it more than anybody else on the team has, and that is the recent surprise addition to Xbox Game Pass with Dead Island 2. Now I'm going to set the stage a little bit here, because this game has a story, and I don't mean the story of the game, but the actual development journey this game went through. So this was taken over, or this was originally being developed by a German studio called Jaeger Development, and they were taking up the sequel for Techland's 2011 release, Dead Island. And then it went wrong, and then it went to Sumo Digital, and then it went wrong, and then it went into Deep Silver's internal studio, Dambuster, who previously made Homefront: The Revolution. right?
And they had
And-
they had 3 years. That's all they
to
had.
rescue this.
Yep.
So it'd been through a lot, and then it's due to come out, and then surprise, they let out a press release and say it's actually coming a week early, and everyone was like, "Huh?" And then you got review code, and I remember the reaction because I think I got a code as well. It's like, this looks great.
Mm-hmm. Like right off the bat, it's really pretty in a way that was very surprising because, like, with the development hell it had been in, you just kind of assumed, oh, this is most likely going to be a mess, and it was not.
Yeah, and I think you scored it quite favorably.
Yeah, I think I was mid eights, like 8.5 or something like that, because it's a little slow to start, just to get you into the world and get you familiar with the way it's going to work on everything. It's very big emphasis on, Jesus Christ, like electricity, fire, and poison chemical reaction stuff as being like one of the main gameplay mechanics. Once you get a little in and you open up your skill cards and you start getting guns, oh boy, the game is ridiculously fun to play, especially in co-op.
Yeah, it's got co-op. It's out on Game Pass, so this is a perfect excuse to dive
out of nowhere.
Pals.
a day after. So we've talked with was it Megan? Megan is rad.
Yeah.
And she said before, yeah, sometimes the deal just got signed. So if it's like, oh, how come it was like a day or two after? It's like, well, they just signed it. Like, or they had signed it a day or two before I did the blog. So she just couldn't add it in time. It wasn't going to be ready because they have to get all that, get it through legal, make sure it's all right. Which is funny because I actually did have a mistake with Tales of Arise earlier in the month where they put it in the Wave 1 headline, but was actually in the Wave 2 grouping. But yeah, so this game, it's under a year old. I think it was like last March or something. Really, it's just really freaking fun.
Yeah, it released April 18th in 2023.
April.
So
okay.
It's under a year.
Yeah. So it feels older because we've heard about this game since 2014. Like, that's when it was first shown off in a very different format from a very different company. Its biggest success outside of the gore system, which is that you just can tear zombies apart, essentially piece by piece. And there's flesh and muscle and then bone all there, and you can see it all, and you can chop it up. It's legitimately funny. Like, it's entertainingly funny. It's not going to be super serious. When it does try to be serious, it works pretty well. The few times in the story where it's really going for that. But for the most part, it knows it's just a big, dumb, gory love letter to, like, B-tier feeling zombie movies where they're just really fun, but they don't have a big budget. And this one is able to kind of get past the issues that you have a lot of times where these games, you can tell they don't have the biggest budget, but this one masks that just well enough so that it still feels big, even though in the end I don't think it really was a huge cost.
And it's interesting, right? Because Dead Island, the original, was famously set in a tropical resort. It was on an island, right? Hence the name. And so you had zombies in beach gear and bikinis and all sorts of silly stuff. I remember a really awful, tasteless, collectible statue thing or some slow motion trailer. Anyway, they called it Dead Island 2, but it's not actually on an island.
The way they justify it being LA or Helle, as they like to call it a lot, is
nice.
They've sectioned off that part of California, essentially turning it into an island because they've just completely cordoned the zombie infested area off. So that's their in-game justification for calling it Dead Island. Yeah,
it works. Now, for those that love zombie games but dislike weapon breaking mechanics, what do you have to say to people like me that love to pick up a really cool gun and then it just works forever? How does Dead Island 2 handle weapons and melee items and things of that?
You can very easily fix them. There are workbenches everywhere. When you get something that's like a blue or a purple or a yellow, like something, the more powerful something is, the more rare it is, the more cost to repair, but also generally the longer it takes to break. And you can also put on extra You can modify your weapons. You can make them electrical or poisonous or a corrosive, I think they call it, or fire. Or you can also make it more durable and that type of stuff, and just use the same thing for half an hour without it breaking. But then you can always just go back to a workbench and fix it. And guns are just down to ammo, so you don't have to worry about them breaking. That I really don't remember guns breaking. It's just the weaponry. You also have the world's greatest dropkick. You can choose like a jumping kick if you want, but no one should ever choose that. There's
just the other kick for everybody.
Yeah, the drop kick rules. The main mechanic for outside of weapons is your curveballs, they call them. So you can have various things you throw. The first one you get is like bait, so you can just make the monsters all get off you and go try and eat all this friggin' human food, essentially, that you throw.
Yummy.
You get like shurikens, you get an electrified shuriken. You also get this big water thing, so you can cover everything in water and then throw an electric shuriken at them and zap them all. So there's enough variety as you go throughout the game. There are a lot of guns, thankfully. I think that helps quite a bit, because guns don't break. You just need ammo. Ammo's decently plentiful. You can modify all of it. The bigger editions, like they gave us the top tier edition for review, so that we'll go back and keep covering it as expansions come out. But then I couldn't get early access to the first expansion, so it wasn't worth doing. House, Haus, it's called, and I don't think people said it was okay, nothing great. But there's good items in there, but I think you can still also get those items in game, so it's like you don't have to buy them. For the most part, it really is more of what I had been hoping Dying Light 2 would do, because Techland went on from Dead Island to Dying Light. Dying Light, incredible game, just good at launch, and then some of the best post-launch support I've ever seen for a single-player title. Well, it's co-op, but a non-live service title. But then Dying Light 2 came out, and just no guns. They got rid of them completely. I was like, ugh. Because Dying Light 2 is really good otherwise. Like, it feels great to play, looks good, but I missed guns. And then thankfully, Dead Island 2 has a ton of them. They're not overpowered, but they're also not useless. And there's a nice variety to them. Really chunky shotguns, little SMGs, assault rifles, big ass actual rifles. Like, between the variety of weaponry, where both blunt and bladed can feel really good and be really useful. The builds you make, essentially, because there's, I think, 5 or 6 characters. There's a couple of fast ones, a couple of fast but strong, and then a couple of slow but super strong. And so the types of weapons you use, the cards they get, so that you can change up and sort of maximize your build, but it's very basic. It's not like Destiny. That type of stuff added a ton to the game, because there are some characters who are super good with blades, and if you have a bladed weapon and you throw it at someone from behind, it'll just almost always kill them. And that type of stuff, because they're also super fast and they got to dodge around. But then the other guys, they can just block, and if you parry the right time, they heal a bunch. So you can almost make like a tank build in your group, but it's not so necessary that you feel, oh well, if you're them, I'll have to be them. It's like, you can just play whoever you want, however you like playing, and it's just really fun. It's just a very fun video game.
For single player gamers out there that don't want to co-op it, how long are we talking for a campaign playthrough of Dead Island 2?
I don't remember. I've got to look it up. See, the issue I have whenever I'm the one talking about a game on this show is if it's been more than a couple months, and this one was last April, I have probably reviewed 40 or 50 games since then. So let me quick.
Let's assume 8 to 10
How
hours,
long
right?
Nope, longer than that. How long to beat Dead Island 2? I was about 20.
Nice.
You can beat it. I was doing...
That's a
if you do
game.
That's if you do a lot of side stuff. I think I was like 25 total doing all the side missions I could, because I just really enjoyed it during review period. If you mainlined it, probably like 15 hours-ish or so.
Yeah.
And enough variety in locations, and I mean, it's always just killing enemies or defending a spot pretty much, but there's enough variety in everything you do, and it looks really good all the time. Especially the whole
60 FPS.
Yeah, the gore system, it's very much a game that benefits from being cross-gen, because while it looks very nice, it's not trying to look so nice that it doesn't run well. It runs really well. So a smooth 60. It's not on Game Pass PC yet. There's a chance it could come later because Game Pass, not Game Pass PC. It is, Jesus Christ, exclusive to the Epic Game Store for 1 more month as part of their initial launch deal. So in April, it's coming to Steam. And when it comes to Steam, there could be a chance, I have no idea, but there could be a chance that it now then comes to Game Pass PC. And
that makes sense.
Yeah, and if this game is one, I've heard that it's even better looking on PC. So if you got a nice computer at that point, and if it ever does come to Game Pass PC, definitely worth checking out there. Dead Island 2 is way better than anyone thought it would be. Like, I remember getting the code and being like, I hope this is fun. I really liked Dead Island 1, even though it had very bad writing and very bad voice acting. And I really loved Dying Light, but then Dying Light 2 took away some of the fun that I liked and was super serious. And I think this one rides the line of being that mix of really goofy by default, but when it has to get serious for the story, it's actually well done because the writing's always good. Like, the writing's never bad. It lampoons American culture and LA especially pretty damn well. Yeah, it's one of those things where it can be very cringy and bad when people just aren't good at comedy, but thankfully they're committed to playing it straight. It's a very stupid situation. 8.5 is what I gave it. Thank you, video I was playing. They are committed to being funny while not trying to sound funny. Like, the music's great. Even when you just open the
channeling that B tier kind of vibe throughout.
Pulpy.
Yeah, that's a good word. Good word.
That is
inside of an orange.
You know what I think, John? I think if we ever do any type of Patreon subathon, that's a game we should play together.
Okay, I'm down. I'm down with
It'd be
this.
fun as shit. I freaking love that game. I streamed it last week. Everyone was like, yeah, I've been playing this. This is awesome. So if you just want something fun to play either alone or I think with up to 2 other people, and you only need to play like 20 minutes to unlock the co-op, yeah, you should play Dead Island 2.
There you go. You heard it here first. Well, thanks, Jesse. Dead Island 2, available right now on Xbox Game Pass for console only. Check back in late April to see if it's appeared on PC somewhere outside of Steam, of course. Yes. But yeah, thanks very much for chatting through your experiences with the game. We've got 1 more to go. We're back in a minute.
See you in a minute. Or a second. Hello. And I'm back once again with Sik and Mechanico, John Clark, my full-time working companion, Buddy Buckaroo, for our 3rd and final segment of this extremely late February Day 1 Game Pass show. So late, I don't even think I've asked Pre-Drag for a thumbnail yet, so it's going to have a nice generic one to start. But John, we are here to talk about a little game called A Little to the Left, which I had seen for years at indie showcases with a couple in their cat, and you played it and reviewed it for us.
I did. It's an interesting one. So it's a little dev team, right? I think they're a couple and they've got a cat, and their cat is featured in the game. And the general premise of Little to the Left, at first, you'd think it's about tidying stuff up, right? So organizing things, putting things in their proper place. And if you were a fan of, when was it? 2021, I think it came out, Unpacking, which was similar in that you moved from house move to house move, and you were putting away things in the it didn't have to be the exact place, but you had to fit everything. It had to go in the kitchen or in the bathroom. Similar kind of vibe, but also not. And I'll explain why it kind of goes off that beaten path. But if for fans of puzzle games and who enjoy that tidying up, getting everything just perfect sense of satisfaction, it's a solid game to play. I don't think you'd have a bad time with it.
There's one thing I remember. It's a solid game to play on PC. It's a more frustrating game to play with a controller.
Yeah, there are niggles. So there's good things and bad things. One, it is on Game Pass Cloud, so and it supports touch. So I played this across the review period on multiple devices. I played it on my PC, where mouse ruled because you could be very precise in how you move things. Touch was a very close second. I have a touchscreen laptop which ran the game perfectly comfortably, and that was great to use. But on pad, the left stick is very sensitive. They've added some control efforts there to kind of mitigate that, where you can flip the right stick in any direction and it will ping to the next available object on the screen. But it is fiddly when you're wanting to put something somewhere precisely. It doesn't quite feel as good as it should. But there's no massive bugs or issues. I think I had one occasion where I put something where it definitely should go, and the game would not recognize it as a solution. But there are some oddities here, and the problem is the game becomes something where initially it lulls you into thinking this is about tidying things up or putting things in the right order, but then it kind of stops operating on tidy logic and starts operating on weird puzzle logic, where you're not really tidying, you are having to find the right way to tidy. So it loses, I think, what made a game like Unpacking so great, in that we understand where items live in a house, in a kitchen or in a bathroom or in a bedroom. But this went from, I'm going to tidy things in a specific way, to, oh, you've got to figure out exactly how the developer intends you to solve this puzzle. And that's where it's
the Rockstar issue, where there's a way to do this very specific action, and if you go outside of that, we're not happy.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of puzzles that start to do that. There's one where you're lining up bottles, right? And they've all got different curves and shape. Like a bleach bottle kind of has that bend in it to get around to the toilet rim. They've got all these kind of things, and you're like, okay, but then you've got this sponge, and the sponge, no matter where you put it, it just drops to the floor, unless you put it on this specific bottle that has the specific angle, and then the sponge just magically stays there. And it's like, only through trial and error, unless you're like a genius, are you going to realize that that's what you should be doing. And that's where it starts to kind of lose it. So I would approach it in more of a puzzle game that starts to get increasingly more like, I don't know what the word is. It gets more obscure in its solutions towards the end of the game. Yeah, but it's still lovely. Like, it's very chilled. And when you are doing the stuff where you're like organizing 3 drawers full of like odds and ends of like bits of screwdrivers and pins and batteries and all sorts, and you're finding the exact place, it's very like, you just zen out and you're just putting stuff away. But when it throws those kind of like, organize this table full of seeds into a pattern, and you're like, okay, it starts to lose me a little bit. So it's not as satisfying as it could have been, but I think that's probably down to the individual. If you approach it more as a puzzle game that has elements of that zen-like tidying, but also recognize that it's going to turn into puzzles, you'll have a good time. Having said all that, there is some really neat solutions in here where I think the developers obviously realized that maybe we should be able to help people out. So if you get stuck on a puzzle, or if you don't like this type of puzzle, you can press start and select let it be. I don't want to tidy this up, and it will just skip you straight along. There's no penalty. There's no like you're not gonna be able to progress. You can just skip it, right? And also, if you're really stuck, there is a great hint mechanic where you can ask for a hint, and you can pick up an eraser in the game, and you'll get a sketch of the solution. So you could like, if you want to like, okay, I'll just rub off half of the solution so I can get an idea, and then I'll figure out the rest. And you can kind of ease your way in that way.
That's smart.
So yeah, there's some nice design touches there that elevate it a little bit. And you mentioned the cat that belongs to these 2 developers. This big floofy white cat. He appears, or she appears, I'm not sure, throughout the game in a variety of ways. From, you might have tidied up a load of stuff, and you'll just have this pause like swipe across the screen and mess it all up. And he'll increasingly appear throughout the game, and then towards the end game it becomes a lot about the cat in some surprising ways. But overall, you know what, I don't think you'd have a bad time with it. I would actually recommend playing this as a every now and then game, or playing it on streaming, or in bed if you can, before you go to sleep at night. It's quite a nice one to just use touch on your phone and just drag and drop things. It does have some nice features like the daily tidy. So if you finish the game and you just want to do a tidy a day to start your day, it will give you a variance on an existing puzzle, like it will change the colors and all sorts. And it has some DLC available at launch for like a $5, which isn't much, but it's the better kind of puzzle, where it's actually, for those that like the tidying aspect of these sorts of games, it's a puzzle that focuses on, it's called Cupboards and Drawers DLC. So it's putting stuff in all the right places, which is more where I think the game was at its strongest, rather than going down the kind of more puzzly.
I wouldn't be surprised if they heard that feedback and that's why they focused on it for the DLC.
I sense that might have been the case. Yeah, we wanted a tidying up game. We don't tidy up our own homes or lives, but we certainly want to do it digitally. And that works. But it's not bad. The review edition came with the DLC, so I dived in and did several levels there. And it's much more my vein of the preferred style of the game. Overall, a nice little title to while away some hours. I don't think it would take you longer than, I want to say 3 to 4, maybe 5 hours at a push if you're really struggling with some of the more crazy puzzles to get through. And it's probably pretty simple to get through all of the achievements for this one as well. There are multiple solutions for some puzzles. So, like you'll organize a row of bookcases or books on a bookshelf, and you might organize them by height, but then what if you organize them by color? Or what if you organize them by width? Like there are multiple solutions for some puzzles, and it will tell you how many solutions you've got on a puzzle or not. So it's nicely designed in that aspect, and definitely worth a go if you're a puzzle game fan. And that's about it, really, for A Little to the Left. And I guess that brings this thrilling episode for February of Day One to a close.
We will try, and probably middle of each month, generally after, at least after the first wave, maybe roughly around or after the second wave. You can expect these to hit more often, especially as now have someone with me full time to do all this stuff. So, yeah, it does.
And hey, we gotta say, if you enjoy these kinds of extra content, extra shows, if you haven't checked it out and you're listening to this, Jesse and I recently launched XboxEra Headlines, which is our twice weekly news show with a reservation there to hold an emergency breaking news episode if something crazy goes down. So check that out. It is exclusive on Patreon to our audio listeners, but it is available on YouTube to everyone. But you can listen to the podcast version on Spotify if you're on Patreon, or download.
We are fancy bitches now with our.
Yeah, like, do you know what I checked? That's really fun. Small anecdote before we close out the show. I looked at lots of other big Patreon funded publications today. We offer more content, more exclusive content, more videos, more stuff you can actually consume than the vast majority of them. And yet we are the smallest.
Yeah.
Make that change.
I've only done 5 reviews this week. I'll try and do more. But thank you so much for joining me, John.
It's always a pleasure, my friend.
Your guys will probably see a lot of us. I'll try and get Cengiz and Fairy and others on as I can. But, you'll see a lot of us too, since we are the full-timers for XboxEra now. Yeah. But thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you next time for the Day 1 Game Pass show.
Ciao for now.